Well, welcome back to Three Zen. Bobo's here. So now I'm going to take a little break from formation flying and talk to you about a couple rides I had in the F-111, actually the F-111C. In 1980, I managed to snag an exchange tour down to Air Force level flight safety in Australia, down in Canberra, Australia. And I was assigned the responsibility for watching over the Mirage community and the F-111 community. And I had a blast. So after a period of time at the headquarters, I was invited or sent TDY up to Amberley to introduce myself and kind of get a feel for their operations and so forth. Now, I wasn't a knucklehead, as they referred to fighter pilots as. Are you a knuck? No, I'm just a... Okay, fine. So I go up to Amberley, and it's up at Brisbane, and meet some of the guys in the squadron. I met Tom Burgum, who was the exchange officer in the F-111 community up there. Great guy. As a matter of fact, Bergie and I are still very close friends on the Facebook. So anyway, after I was up there a day or so, squadron commander says, well, how'd you like to go for a ride? And I looked at him and said, you can let me go for a ride in the F-111? Totally unheard of in the United States Air Force. No way in hell. He says, well, yeah, mate. He says, you're a pilot, aren't you? And I said, yeah. And he says, well, he said, would you like to go for a ride? I said, most certainly. So the next day, I showed up and they took me over the simulator, gave me a little bit of an orientation. And then we headed out to the jet, and as we're walking out to the jet, the guy I was flying with says, well, mate, he says, you want the right seat or the left seat today? And I thought, well, being my first ride, why don't I take the right seat and kind of get oriented, and then if I get another ride, maybe I'll take the left seat on that one. Okay, good. So I climbed in, he fired it up, and we taxied out, and got on the runway, and he says, handing over. And I looked at him, I said, you going to let me do the takeoff? He said, well, you're a pilot, aren't you? Yeah, I'm starting to like this. So I took the airplane, and we ran it up, and everything checked out. Went into AB, and everything checked out again, released brakes, and off we went. So we get airborne, and he ran the wings that flight, forward and back and so forth, and went out over the water. Amberley sits right on the coast. Went out over the water, did a little bit of handling exercises just to see what the feel of the airplane was at different wing settings, different airspeeds, and so forth. And then we decided, okay, let's get down on the deck and see what it's like here. So he puts us down about 100 feet out over the water, about 30 miles offshore. And he starts increasing the speed. Now, this was amazing. I'll never forget this. We're sitting there, and as the speed is increasing, I'm sitting there watching the airspeed indicator. We're going up through 400 knots, 500 knots, and as we get up to 600 knots, I start to notice that my field of vision is starting to narrow in. I'm starting to get what they call tunnel vision. I can't see anything out left or right. I am focused totally on a window, and then it's getting real pinhole. Everything else around me is black. And I'm just sitting there. I don't know if I was scared shitless, but I was amazed at the phenomenon. Now, I've never been fearful in an airplane, hardly at all. Maybe once or twice, I don't know. But this was amazing to me just to see that phenomena. And then it dawned on me, wait a minute, Bob, what do you got to be scared of? If you hit the water, you're going to die before the nerve tells you you're hurt. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm good. And then the vision came back. So, and then I could start to enjoy the ride. So we're flying along, and he says, hey, mate, he says, look in the radar, see if we got any blips up ahead. So I looked in the radar, and, from my 141 days and playing with radar, C-130 days, I could tweak a radar. I kind of I couldn't run it refined, but I knew enough to find a boat, for crying out loud. So I looked out there, there's a boat up ahead. So he says, all right, mate, we're going to run a mock attack on it. So, okay, so we're at maybe 100 feet going 600 knots, and he offsets to the left of this thing, and we go whizzing by this guy below deck, and I mean, it was a lot of fun. And we got below deck then, got by him. He pulls up like so, and kind of does a modified Whifferdale cloverleaf or whatever it was. And now we're coming in 90 degrees to the boat. And he's a little bit below deck. And he says, now, mate, he says, I neglected to give you a safety briefing. He says, what we need to do is stay forward of the aft end of the ship. He says, that's where the birds hang out. So he's coming in, and we're a little bit below the deck, okay? As he comes up, he pulls up, rolls over the top of the damn thing, and then back down the side, and then lights a burners over the top, and then we egress. Good fun, mate. So I said, oh, God, that was a lot of fun. So then, as we're chugging southbound, he says, you want to fly for a bit? You want a bit of a fly? I said, well, yeah. So I take the airplane. He said, okay, just try to keep it at 100 feet and so forth. So radio, so he says, handing over. I said, taking over. That's what you say in Australian. So I'm whistling along, and all of a sudden I hear this guy kind of gagging or breathing hard, and I look over at him, and he's sitting there. I said, are you okay, John? He says, mate, he says, I'm getting hypoxia. And I look into the altimeter, we're at 150 feet, and he's sitting there giving me, I'm getting hypoxia. So I eased it back down to 100 feet, and we continued on our way. All of a sudden, we're charging along. All of a sudden, Jono says, he says, hey, I got the airplane. And he says, take it over, mate. So he says, I got the airplane. He whips it into a hard left-hand turn and turns around. And by God, we saw a snorkel off the coast, a submarine snorkel. So he's doing his best to come around. He says, mate, you see it? Yeah. You know, there it was. And by the time we got around on him and then came back for, to keep him in sight, it had gone down. And just fantastic to have seen that. And then we came back and we did a little bit of TFR in it. And then came back to Amberley and did a few touch and goes. And, he said, you want a first or the second landing, mate? And I said, you can let me do the landings? Yeah, you're a pilot. Yeah, I got this. Okay, I got it. We're good. So I did that. And then after we touched down, taxied in, and debriefed a little bit, we went over to they call them the spies, the intel shop, and told them what we'd seen, and they were fascinated with that. So that was one hell of an F-111 ride. I got one more down under, and if I can think about anything extraordinary that happened on that ride, I'll be sure to tell you about it. But that was the difference in philosophy in flying in the American Air Force and flying in the Australian Air Force. God, that was fun. But at any rate, enough fun for one day. This is Bobo. Base gears, stop. Good to see you, buddy.